Hello, I'm Peter Blackwood. I'm coordinator of the Uniting Church in Australia's Icon Schools. Each year, Philip Davydov and Olga Shalamova from St. Petersburg, two contemporary Russian iconographers, visit Melbourne and conduct classes. This year, in January 2019, the Icon Schools invited Philip and Olga to spend an afternoon with us, and they generously provided a wonderful program of lecture and demonstration. Philip Davydov's lecture continued on this wonderful Saturday afternoon in January to talk about the restoration of iconography and the development of contemporary iconography in the Russian Church.
Problems. And among these things which survived are the emigrants, a large group of which went to France, where they founded their community, several communities, and one of these communities had a triangular church because it symbolized Trinity. And the gentleman who brought it up was an engineer, so he gathered stones on the local fields. And this was painted by one of the most famous iconographers of the 20th century, Grigory Krug, who again was trying to gain his motivation and inspiration from ancient times, being at the same time trained as contemporary artist. And he was not only genius, but also taught people around him. And not only about his works we can speak, which are wonderful and inspiring for generations after, but also about people who around him created kind of a circle. And I think you will know, or most of you will have heard, the name of Uspensky, who was his student, who was actually trying to bring to larger audience the things they have learned together and they've put in use. So, and I would say that for me, even with no gold almost, this probably is the best ever space for prayer because of integrity and because of intentional use of every single bit of the space without too much decoration or excessive aesthetical researches, but just as they considered it to be the best. Not too much loaded and not too empty at the same time. And that's how it looks kind of in church, in service time. Well, there are many icons of Grigory Krug and Uspensky which are available to be seen in Paris. I just want to bring forward what their aim was as iconographers. They were not trying to repeat every single stroke of the highlight on the robe, but rather trying to give the character to the figure and working more with a very powerful view. They would rather laud the believer with a prayerful mood and peaceful, state of soul, instead of demonstrating their ability to build highlights and shadows. Okay, these are, there are many, and I love seeing them, but I just want to go a little further. And yeah, these are by Uspensky, a little more modest, but again, following the same principles. And okay, I should have taken a couple of them away. And this is another church in Paris, which has not only icons, but a very interesting painting on the background made by another lady who was an artist and who, at the end of her life, even immigrated back to Russia, Joanna Reichinger, who was very well known because she was friend of Alexander Main. So we are coming closer to our times after the World War II. And she was an artist, so she tried to make her art, education and feelings obey the requirements of the church, remaining with her freedom and remaining a real artist with all her literacy. So that's what remained after her. They lived in very poor circumstances, and many icons she did were very little as gifts to someone who would come to the church for like several months and bring something with them. And we also know that some of her icons, if they were to be shipped, she would have shipped in boxes of chocolates, so nobody would guess this would be an icon, even though she could have suffered for that. So this was a special process. And now it's time to mention another person who is well known to be present in process of recovery of the iconography of the medieval time, and technically that's how a trinity might look like if you enter this church 100 years ago. Would you recognize anything? I doubt. I'm not sure what would Rublev have said if he would have seen that. But that was their way of veneration. That was the way of showing respect. So they would paint on top of the image to keep it visible, and they would decorate it with gilt gold or everything else just to make sure their respect is shown. But the change from there to here was so strong that I bet that this lady, being a very young girl at the moment, whose name was Julia Sokolova, was so much surprised that she decided to dedicate the whole life of hers to studying the medieval Christian art in Russia, and she continued her work. Well, at this moment she's no more young, but that is one of the pictures we have of hers in the book. And she worked in Zagorsk, which is Sergiev Posad, currently reopened after the World War II. And she didn't have officially a school, but there was a little circle of people who were interested to study with her. And she tried to teach them what she learned, but being first a secular artist, she used to tell to her students that being a secular artist is incompatible with being an iconographer, so they had to kill an artist in themselves in order to become real ones. And what happened was that being a real artist at the moment and being human who had this visual literacy and was able to work as an artist, she was teaching others not to use this literacy. She had lots of sketches and studies to help those who around her tried to learn iconography, but when we look at them, we really see they were sketches. They didn't sell them. She didn't try to make a book out of them, because these were didactic tools you may have in your studio over here just for everyday use. Like someone would ask you how to draw a finger, she would say, look, okay, I can draw one for you. And that was something which she thought to be helpful. But what happened was, images like that she was admiring and producing things which look like this or slightly different, inspired by the old images, but yet being faithful to her background as an artist, which told her that this green is good with this one, but this red will powerfully pop out, so keep it to make the image visible. And other similar visual groups, she tried to think about it herself, but she didn't know that her followers will not be able to use them. So all of her drawings and didactic materials were, like beard or many other things like that, were later transformed into something which now people used to say to call linear drawings. So they try to make them become perfect, because that was what they want to make the images to be. They do want their images to be perfect ones, therefore they train on drawing perfect lines. And I've talked to people who studied the school where she taught, because it's a new generation now, and I have heard several times the term culture of the brushstroke. Very particular culture of the brushstroke, which they learn. So technically, what they do, they try to bring most out of the models, learning the outlines and details and the features as she taught them to learn. But they never think about that.
Excuse me, Philip, what is the name of this artist?
This artist's name is Juliania Sokolova. She was the founder of the icon school in Sergei Posad at that time, Zagros.
Is that I went to Sergei Posad?
Yeah, she searched.
Yeah, I have been there. Is she in the monastery? Was she in the monastery area?
Yes. The monastery was reopened after the World War II.
I have been there, yes. I went there last year.
That's where she was able to do something, and she thought, like, it was a particular feeling of dignity being there and doing something for her. And her followers are there, continuing to do something, but the researches they do, they think of how to perfectly make the highlights and perfectly make the, I don't know, beards, the mustache, and everything else. So the studies of students look very similar to what you see in this picture. They would borrow motifs from different icons of medieval time, like 12th century, 15th century, and try to perfectly learn how to execute them. Because that's what their teachers tell them to do, and that's what they feel iconography is about. So taking an image of hers as an example of what her personality was trying to achieve, we can always compare with what's been produced by people who followed her. And me personally, I see two different worlds. Because the one who didn't have much access to the gold in her poor times, and times when religion was not really promoted, to say gently, and the guys who have access to a lot of gold, they come to study it as a profession, and they have hundreds of hours to produce all of these things, but at the end, I don't see really anything more than their love to the skills they have and to be able to execute things instead of really making them. So they have their diplomas 2 meters high sometimes, different ones, all gilded mostly, in good suits and so forth. But what we see on the screen are the well-imported images, most times having very little to do with the models from point of view of artistic understanding of what predecessors meant by choosing this color or this. It's like I, not knowing, well, I do know one Chinese hero. It's China, but nothing else. If I were to try to reproduce hieroglyphs without understanding them, I bet in one I probably wouldn't have made a mistake. But the second I do, even for me, look very normal, will mean something completely different. So her words, as sometimes maybe even childish, like, well, probably this black line is a little too dark. But her approach was much more sincere and human, depicting the saints and the Mother of God. So coming to the moment when you have to deal with the Trinity, we think about her as someone inspired. And you remember how the Trinity looked at the moment. But we have to remember about her personality and not so much about people coming up to her. I just want to say the two words about the worlds iconographers may present, and worlds which belongs to the visual understanding what you're doing, and the world where you do something you're supposed to do, but you don't really understand what is going on in the image. And that, for me, is a great problem, because having an icon like this in the church, I would say yes, they faithfully followed the drawing. They have spent lots of hours applying these little dots. But how come this horrible blue? All together, maybe on a night. So, how? And that is the problem. So she has educated a generation of people who were taught that the art is a non-existing dimension, that they just have to learn the skill of borrowing models from books or the sources and doing something else. So that's what they produce nowadays. These are the images which in most cases are perfectly accepted by the priests, but which for me present something totally different. Like, okay, the model taken from museum, what happens if I perform it? It's supposedly blue as well, but why would he have chosen the violet to give the diversity? Why would he have chosen to have the throne to be so high? To give you a little more coziness in your position. And many other things which reproducing without thinking or understanding may feel very different. For his understanding, of course, I'm sure he would know that yellow is good for the blue. He didn't want us to enjoy this beauty. Instead, he has chosen the red to be there for us not just to look at this image as a beautiful picture, but as something or some image which wants to talk to him, rather than just make it lovely and nice and gilded. So these for me are the two worlds. The world where she studied and the world where the study transformed into a pattern. That's a very sad thing. And I don't like speaking about bad things, even though I have to sometimes. So the last chapter, which I hope will not last longer than maybe 8 minutes and a half, will probably be dedicated to some positive things we have in our contemporary iconography, I hope. And this is an older age couple, I think they're in their 60s, maybe 70s now. And her name is Irina Zaron, and his name is Sergei Antonov. She does the icons and paintings, and he does the carvings. So they have produced this, I would say, even amazing iconostasis, because we do recognize the source as medieval art and the tradition as a possibility to learn the rules. But the way that the rules applied is much more freer and contemporary in the application, because we don't see it as a copy. We see it as an artist's work, but respectful one. And that's a very rare thing in contemporary iconography. So these are the Irina Zaron and Sergei Antonov's work. And thinking about the monumental part of this church, she has decided that icons are probably the main part of the church environment. And even thinking that she has to have some frescoes on top, she made them, but with respect to the icons. So being an artist, she didn't overload the view of the beholder with the amount of things she can do. She tried to render everything in her project in such a way that someone who entered the church would rather feel peacefully influenced with the representations of saints, rather than loaded with possibilities which iconographer had, having access to gold or different kinds of particular highlights and shadows. So I'm really happy to have seen this church in real and to have seen it working. Well, it's a very narrow space, as you see, but you do see, I hope, how one type of imagery respects the other and how it works together. This is some Romanian master. I don't really know him personally, but I just wanted to introduce this as kind of a jump from more traditional works to contemporary, not saying contemporary as a substitution for scandalizing, but contemporary as something which talks to us with the means of the language we used to see around, and that I think is one of the most beautiful examples. It's one color only, but how wonderful and peaceful it works as an icon. So to be contemporary, you don't have to use some, I don't know, bright green or terrible orange. You may just be yourself, investigating how the image you're going to draw or paint may be done properly in order so your neighbor from your street could see it and accept it as well. So that's one of the requirements I have. This is some Serbian gentleman, I always forget his name, but I would say normally an icon would have very strong eyes. In this case, what I see, he avoided having the eyes to be strong. He tried to make this image more peaceful, even getting it less expressed. So there are different ways of thinking of imagery becoming more contemporary and working for our time. And Helen probably, yes, thank you, Helen, probably present your friend Todor Mitrovic from Serbia, and he thinks that the iconography has not only to be traditional, but also has to be respected by contemporary artists. So he wants to be part of society of the church painters, at the same time being part of society of contemporary artists. And that's what he says. Again, I'm happy to show it, and I'm proud of demonstrating his works, not pretending that every most conservative Orthodox church must have his works, but I just want to show that there are many different ways in contemporary Orthodox iconography, or even, iconography in general. Well, he's an Orthodox, so I can say it. And I just want to introduce this as some fresh air and new movements which people try to have. Well, we did criticize him for having this maybe a little too sharp, but overall I think these very poor Jews are walking very elegantly through the Red Sea, which currently is not very red. Okay, let's move on.
What was that artist?
Well, artist's name was Todor Mitrovic. Todor Mitrovic, he is Serbian. And I just want also to show you some of our works in order to try to demonstrate how different can be the approach to different images. Like, you plan some, that is another thing. Okay. A very good event happened. In 2014, we have had even three curators make an exhibition which inspired us to create the exhibition we have in ACU now. They hang together in one space icons and religious images by secular artists or religious artists, which are not icons and non-icons in one space. And that was cool, and I think that's what we have over there. And I think especially this year, it looks like it's getting more and more mutually enriching. So we had this event when people brought different kinds of mosaics, icons, textiles, all types of things. Like this gentleman likes building more abstracted objects, and I think the name of this object was ascetic, something like that. Ascetic. Or he does also crosses like this. Again, these are objects of contemporary art which I don't try to announce to the icons. But I say we do live in this world of contemporary art, and we have to learn from it. We have to learn to be able to use the bright colors, even if sometimes we are not able to. We just have to think about them if possible. Okay, I would never draw transfiguration like that. But I recognize this may have a place in some bishop's office. Why not? Reminding the bishop that it was not just an event happening 2,000 years ago, but something he has to accept as contemporary as well. So why not? There was another gentleman who makes this kind of veil out of Scotch tape, brings them to Jerusalem, to some Russian cities, make it like auctionism. covers the street, takes picture, takes away. Well, it's Scotch tape. It's plastic film, nothing special, but the type of crosses and decoration is borrowed from the icons, and it's normally used for the veils put on the altar tables, another most respectful type of textile. It's like he's sanctifying the earth he's coming to. Why not? And these fabrics were just hanging. There were photographs hanging on there, and these fabrics were just hanging in the exhibition. Well, we have taken away. Sorry, pictures. The same gentleman who made this contour painting, the chef of the Magi, and the same Irina Zarov just created iconography. Sometimes in free time creates the vegetation or other images like that with the sand or I don't know, earth pigments which are available. And this is one of my dad's icons, who I think in later time always has a tendency to have more and more different objects inserted in the image, so more and more details. And like every detail has even more details in itself, and even more on top. So that's what he attracted to. And another iconographer is my dad's generation. He is with name, I have a problem with that can. Yes, thank you. Anatoly Eteneyer, I think he's about 60 something now. And he's painted the Seraphim of Sarov already mentioned 20 minutes ago, because he did talk to animals like St. Francis of Assisi, and he decided to represent him with birds. The parish priest said, wow, birds? I didn't commission that. I'm not taking it. So that very often happens because they try to bring the creativity in the sphere by many people considered not adjustable to it. And these were my majority, quite weak ones, and I think they're much darker in real life. Just brought them back. An exhibition, this piece by Olga is proudly installed in Virginia Theological Seminary, Washington, D.C., their new chapel, restored after rebuilt, brand new chapel after the fire. And yes, several different icons participated in that exhibition. Another lady who produces lots of images with figures very similar to icons, and with usually lots of text around everywhere. Her images are very recognizable. Yelena Cherkasova. And well, there are many people, different things and dimensions. Like one gentleman invented a contemporary ecclesiastic font for purposes of different writings, which would have something in common with the old one, but at the same time would be contemporary enough to be used, I don't know, magazines or anything. So many good things. And that's how it looks like, and that's his veil out of. Okay. Contemporary art, what not? It can be very different. And wow, maybe I should really jump a little further and running us to discover new technology. And in this case, I've used panel used to build houses, the chipboard, and the chipboard background is left as the highlight color, so the paint tone applied on top is just a shadow. Well, that is for a very strange gentleman who has built a church on his yard. So in his yard he has a little chapel, and he said, look, I want something that thieves will not want to take. So I said, well, okay, you can take it. I can make this for you. And I have recently been doing another church, which was a real one, it's a real one. And it was very difficult thing to put together not just the icons, but different other parts of the vestments. Like I had to invent the doors because they're now made of a thick copper. My idea brought from the very remote sources, and I had to think of the chandelier projected and to think about the frames for the icons. So the main purpose was to maintain the peacefulness of the space and keep it without excessive amount of information, which very often in contemporary churches we have. And last year was also the time when I investigated in mosaics and thought of how the different materials work. So I'm proudly presenting my learning exercise and how these things come together, and step by step I'm trying to go in this direction. So hope if next year we see each other, I'll have other things to show. And all this has been working a lot with the paper, and like you can see something on the calendar here on the table. And not only the paper, yes, this became a polyptych. So in the middle there is a part of these 4 compartments, but in total there are 9 of them. So 9 parts, 9 images hanging on the wall in Moscow somewhere now. And this is one of those which are in the calendar. I'm not sure, do I have anything here belonging to your fabric works? I'm not sure. I didn't put it in. Well, okay. Well, right. Yeah, maybe it's not time yet. Maybe we'll just have to have many more other images to show for the next time.
They'll just have to go to 26 Brunswick Street to look at them. They're
yes,
there.
we have 4 different banners printed with like hand printing by all the over there. So it's an inspiring field, and there is the tradition, but there is a great freedom if we know the requirements. If we know what should not be done and where we might go.